Now arriving at Sector C test labs and control facilities.
You are a scientist who works in the Anomalous Materials Lab of the Black Mesa Research Facility, analyzing bizarre samples retrieved from another part of the facility.
Morning, Mr. Freeman. Looks like you're running late.
Everything is pointing to this being just another average day.
Hey, Mr. Freeman. I had a bunch of messages for you, but we had a system crash about 20 minutes ago, and I'm still trying to find my files. Just one of those days, I guess.
Bearing a few small mishaps.
My God, what are you doing?
But little do you know that the events of today are going to put both yourself and humanity on a collision course with the unknown.
The administrator is very concerned that we get a conclusive analysis of today's sample. I gather they went to some lengths to get it.
You are Gordon Freeman.
They're waiting for you, Gordon, in the test chamber.
And this is Half-Life.
Why didn't he listen?
He tried to warn them.
I never thought I'd see a resonance cascade, let alone create one.
In 1996, former Microsoft employees Gabe Newell and Mike Harrington created a game company called Valve Software and set to work on their concept for a horror-themed FPS inspired by the original Doom. Half-Life was developed on a heavily modified version of the original Quake engine called Gold Source. This new version included direct 3D support and full skeletal animation for the various actors and enemies.
For God's sake, open the silo door! They're coming for us! It's our only way out! Oh my God, we're doomed! Stop!
The game also included significant advancements in terms of artificial intelligence. Some of the enemies will retreat from you, some will only engage you in groups, and others will throw grenades to flush you out of cover. Although the latter one can sometimes not be executed very well. The story follows a theoretical physicist named Gordon Freeman as he initially climbs out of the rubble of the Anomalous Materials Lab, encounters a military determined to kill everything in its path, a rocket test lab, the base's waste disposal facility, the mysterious Lambda Lab, and the alien world of Zen. In addition to the symbolic crowbar, Freeman has the standard FPS array of weapons at his disposal, including a pistol, shotgun, assault rifle, grenades, and rocket launcher. You'll also get access to some experimental and alien weapons, such as the disintegrating gluon gun and the ravenous explosive snark. The enemies you'll face include the tiny, annoying, and parasitic head crab. I say parasitic because they have a tendency to latch onto heads and turn scientists into zombies.
Gordon, man, am I glad to see you. What the hell are these things?
Then there's the alien slaves who like to zap you, barnacles who lie in wait for prey, and the large and very grumpy alien grunts. These are just some of the alien enemies. When the government arrives to clean house, you'll face marine grunts of various capabilities. And then there's lady ninja assassins who like to stalk and shoot you. The story is told entirely from Freeman's viewpoint. In fact, there is only one point where you don't actually have control of him, and that's when he's knocked out. captured by the military and dragged to a garbage crusher.
Let's kill him now. And if they find the body? Body? What body?
If you recall the Shadow Warrior episode, I talked about how the continuing flow of the story from one interconnected area to the next was where the FPS was heading post-Doom. This is very true for Half-Life. Aside from a quick loading screen, each area of Half-Life flows almost seamlessly to the next, telling one long, connected story. Another element of the design comes from the form of scripted events that both further the story and provide a set of tutorials. One such event demonstrates that the military is most definitely not here to rescue the scientists.
Don't shoot! I'm with the science team!
Hold on. Much longer.
There are several other events throughout the game, such as this unfortunate scientist clinging to a ladder, this one battling a head crab, this encounter with an attack helicopter near a hydroelectric dam, and of course, the opening Tramway sequence. This Tramway sequence has become somewhat of an icon in terms of FPS story flow design. On one hand, it represents a form of immersion in which you're slowly brought into the world of Black Mesa, experiencing Gordon Freeman's morning commute. On the other, it's a tiny space with very little movement, taking you from set piece to set piece until it decides you've toured long enough. A design choice that became very, very prevalent in the later years of FPS development, from 2005 onwards. And that's definitely a subject we'll approach eventually. For the time, though, this was a revolutionary concept. Not only did they achieve the idea of immersion they had been going for, but they maintained it across stretches of interconnected levels. That is, until the last 45 minutes or so. This is the point when you leap through the portal in the Lambda complex and enter the source of all the baddies you've been fighting, the planet Zen.
We suspect there is an immense portal over there, created by the intense concentration of a single powerful being. You will know it when you see it.
This massive shift of locations is somewhat bizarre. After a splendid setup and believable location after believable location, you're dropped in this world that depends entirely on platforming. Whereas the Black Mesa areas allowed for a variety of enemies, on Zen you really only fight 3 types of enemies before the final boss. Remember my bringing up the awesome bosses in FPSs of this generation? NEligahn is not one of them. To defeat it requires an odd combination of trial and error using environmental lifts. The Zen areas of the game are the most glaring issues in an otherwise stellar title. The vast majority of the game is a pinnacle showcase of what games like Doom and Duke Nukem 3D had been building up to. The pace you travel is up to the player, outside of the monorail sequence. The shooting, while being primarily corridor-focused, still allows for maneuvering and choosing how to deal with encounters. Half-Life was a tremendous hit in 1998, winning numerous Game of the Year awards. It even prompted the creation of several mods that would become staples of the genre. The team that created the original Team Fortress mod for Quake was hired by Valve to create a new version of the game for Half-Life called Team Fortress Classic. Another game that began its life as a popular mod for Half-Life was Counter-Strike, a team-based tactical FPS that revolved around set goals and a store system. Eventually, Valve started working with the CS developers and released a standalone version of this, too. Half-Life is treated by many as a landmark in the evolution of the first-person shooter, for good reason. Though born out of a Quake engine mod, it demonstrated technical achievements that became standards for the genre while demonstrating how a player can be led through a cohesive storyline without being yanked through the nose. However, aside from these mod releases, Valve would become somewhat silent in terms of full new releases for the next 6 years. But the legends of the FPS genre, id Software, hadn't been sitting on their hands during this shift in design. 1 year prior to Half-Life, they released a pseudo-sequel that had set the stage for this next phase of FPS evolution, and we'll get to that in the next episode. Until then, my friends, as always, game on and take care.
I have recommended your services to my employers, and they have authorized me to offer you a job. They agree with me that you have limitless potential. Wisely done, Mr. Freeman. I will see you up ahead.